Hi, and welcome to another episode of Conversations with Chris. During these casual chats, we have the opportunity to get to know members of the Madonna University community, from faculty and staff to students, alumni, and donors. I'm Chris Doherty, president at Madonna, and here with me today is Chris Nickin, production manager here at the university. A two-time Madonna alumnus, Chris coordinated the crew for today's show and would normally be behind the camera in the control room producing this show. Welcome and thanks for the opportunity to learn more about you, Chris, and your work here at Madonna. Let's get started. Why don't you tell us about how you came to work at Madonna?
Thanks for having me. And it's an interesting story. I was an alumnus of this program in the school, and I was still coming back as a mentor. I had spent years coming back, working with the students in the classroom, outside of the classroom, on set with them. So I had never really left Madonna. And I got a phone call one afternoon from Sue Boyd, the director of our program now, and she had asked if I was willing to come back and help revamp and co-teach the capstone film class with her. And so after a long conversation, we talked, I was sitting in my car, must have been 45 minutes, we talked about every little detail, and I told her if I can come back and revamp it and turn it into a feature-length film program, which is what I wanted when I was a student, I said I would come back. And so she talked to the director of our program at the time, Chuck Derry, and they both agreed and they backed me up, and I came in and Sue and I started teaching, and I started my first class January of 2014 teaching here at Madonna. So that's really how I got my start here, was mentoring students and helping them to begin with, and they said, hey, come back and help.
Yeah.
So
terrific. Yeah, and Sue's been on the show with us too as well. So
yes.
Great. What do you enjoy most about working at Madonna?
You know, when I first came back to start here at Madonna, I thought I would come back for a year, maybe two, and like rebuild the program, get the film going, and then head back out, because I was directing and producing film and television, and that's where my passion was. And there was something that happened in those year or two, as you can tell, I'm still here, and it was the moments with the students, and that's really what I enjoy most, is when a student is struggling or they don't understand a concept and we're working with them and we're teaching and we're guiding, but it's that moment when you can see something clicks and their eyes light up and they start to smile and they get excited and they start incorporating this into their work, and they start to see where they go from being a student to becoming more of a professional and their work gets better. And it's those moments. It's that moment when you see the student kind of, there's a sparkle in their eye, it shines. And to me, that's what makes what we do worthwhile. And that's my honest favorite moment about working here, and why I continue to work here is those, you don't get them all the time, but when you do, it's like winning the lottery. It's amazing. That's great.
And I've had the wonderful experience of seeing you work with students here in the studio, and even today we have students working with us, setting up everything about the shot. So we're a sponsored work at the Felician Sisters. A lot of your experience as a student, as a member of the community, includes your work with the Felician Sisters, and includes your relationship with the late Sister Ann Stam and others. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of the Felician Sisters here at Madonna, what it means to you then, what it means to you today, and going forward?
Absolutely. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Felician Sisters. And I grew up around them. Sister Ann Stam was the police chaplain at one point, and my mother was the judge of Livonia. My grandfather was the judge before her. We have police officers in our family, and so they were always around. But Sister Ann spent so much time with us. She was at family events. She was at Thanksgiving every year. But as a child, I didn't really know what that meant. She was Auntie Ann to me. And being a little kid, I just thought she was my poor aunt that only had one pair of clothes. I didn't understand the full story. So she was Auntie Ann. And, as I got older and started to understand, and I was always around Sister Rose, because she was always, coming from a political family. There was a saying back in the day, if the sisters are on your side, you can win any election. And so we knew so many of the sisters, and I was at so many dinners and so many events and so many family events where the sisters were there. And so they really helped shape a lot of who I am today. And to be fair, if it wasn't for them, I don't know. I mean, if it wasn't for the Felician Sisters, none of us would be here at Madonna. But specifically, I would not, because they brought me here, and they guided a lot of my life to this point. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and the influence the Felician Sisters have on so many in the community here. Share it with me all the time when I'm out in events in the community and hear about all of their good work. You have another great story with regard to your relationship with the late Sister Rosemarie Kajawa, who was president here at Madonna for a number of years, and the impact that she had on your decision to attend Madonna. If you can, share a little bit of that story with us.
Oh my goodness. So Sister Rose, I don't know if it was, she had vision, right? She could see things that others couldn't. And she knew things. And so she was at a dinner with my parents, and she was talking with my mother about me, and they were having a conversation. And I had been in and out of school. I was a C student at best growing up, in grade school. And then I had gone to Schoolcraft, and I would take classes and then leave. And I was always working, but I wasn't headed in a great direction. I was more worried about going to work, getting a paycheck, and then going out with friends, going to the bar, just kind of whatever. And Sister Rose told my mom, enough is enough. I'm going to straighten him out. And she picked the day and time, and she said, and this was, I think it was in August, if I recall correctly, but she picked the day and time, and she said, you send Chris to me, and I'm meeting with him. I will fix this. And so my mom came home and said, you're going to listen to the sister. You don't get to say no to this. And so I got dressed and I went in and I met with Sister Rose, and it was early in the morning, and I sat down and she talked with me. So, for a president of a university to give up time for a student, or a non-student at this point, to be fair, and to spend that much time with me was kind of mind-boggling, because that doesn't always happen. Presidents are very busy. But she spent probably 45 minutes to an hour with me, and we talked about everything. We talked about life, mistakes, passions, drives, what I was doing with my life, where I was going. And by the end of the conversation, she said, okay, get up, follow me. And I did. And I followed her. And she took me down to what was at that time the TVC, Television and Video Communications department. We had a hallway. And she took me down. She introduced me to the director, Chuck Derry, and said, Chris is going to be joining us in the winter. He'll be here in January. I hadn't applied. I had no idea if I could even get into Madonna. She said, he will be here in January. He has no choice. And Chuck said, okay. And so he introduced me to Sue and Dan Boyd, and they introduced me to some of the students, and I hung out for a couple hours and got to know people. And then I left, and I went to, I talked to the enrollment office, and they told me all the classes I needed to take at Schoolcraft to actually get into Madonna. And so I signed up for those classes for the fall term. And for the first time in my life, I had gotten straight A's, because I wasn't going to disappoint Sister Rose. And I got in. I passed the writing exam. I got accepted, and I started in January. And here I was, because Sister Rose demanded it. She said, you're coming. You have no choice. So here I was. And then about 6 months or so later, maybe it was a little bit longer, she was at another dinner with my mom and my dad, and she told them, she's like, for the first time in my life, I was a straight A student. I was on the honor roll. They were so happy. They're like, what did you do to him? He was not a good student. And she said, Chris is going to be a teacher at Madonna one day. And they started laughing. They said, no chance. And they came home and told me that night, and they said, no chance. I was like, it's never going to happen. I'm not going to be a teacher. And lo and behold, she was still the president when I started teaching here. And it was just one of those moments that came to fruition, that she saw it. And I am going to give a shout out to our engineer, Dan Boyd, who, when I was a student here, he said something very similar. He saw something and he said it, and I told him no. But so maybe he has that same vision that Sister Rose had. But they both, they knew something. And Sister Rose she said, you're going to be a student, you're going to be a teacher, Madonna is your future. And here I am all these years later.
Such a great story. And I think a great reminder for all of us who work with students today, work with the community, and the impact that we can have by taking the time in each of our roles and responsibilities. So thanks for sharing that with us. We have time for one more question that I just want to ask you, just in terms of all of your work with faculty, with students, with staff here at Madonna. What are some of your best memories?
Oh my goodness, I have a lot of memories. It's, a long time. Many years of wandering these halls. One of my fond memories is, again, Dan Boyd. I have a picture of Dan Boyd and I standing right here when it was a chalk outline of what this building was going to be and where the studio was going to be. There was no building, there was nothing here, but almost in this exact spot, Dan and I are just standing here, and they took a picture of us. So, And it was the connections I made. It was the bonding I made. We used to do these things that would probably be frowned upon back then and today, but we would do hallway chair races in the TVC department where we would grab cameras and we would all be in our wheelie chairs that they had bought, and we would launch each other like bowling balls down the aisle with our cameras, and we would race to see who could get farther the fastest. And in that hallway where the graduate school is, there's a wall with a door now before the stairs. That wasn't there when we were students. It was just stairs and down, and we would launch towards the stairs every time and try to stop before the stairs. So, there's, all sorts of moments. But again, it's back to, I think my favorite experience ever, my favorite memory is when the alumni reach out and tell me what they're doing. And they call and they check in and they ask how things are going here, or they offer to volunteer. And I have some students that graduated, over a decade ago that still reach out to me to tell me what they're up to and what's going on, and, just to catch up and just to say, hey, thank you. And, those are the moments that it's like, when I think back, if I were to leave today and never come back, those are the moments I'd remember the most. So
that's great.
Yeah.
And Chris, thank you. Always a pleasure talking with you. Sincerely appreciate everything that you do for Madonna, for the students, and for our university as a whole. Thanks for sharing your passion, your expertise, and your craft as you prepare students for careers in broadcast and cinema arts. Good to be with you today. I'm Chris Doherty. Look forward to hosting more conversations with Chris in the future. Peace and all good.